Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am the president of the International Hotel and Restaurant Association. I am representing the sector activity for the Restaurant and Hospitality Association. I am an American citizen. I usually speak in English, but as I am in France here at the Parliament, I've chosen to speak with the language of Molière in order to pay respect for the country and the place, the venue. I would just only ask you to be kind with me if I do make a few mistakes with genders and masculine, feminine. We can't be perfect in life. I'm very grateful, Mr. François, for inviting me to address you today. You've had a lot of hard work has been done since I was the president for the IH&RA in 2005. I received some congratulations from you, which raised my interest in your organization, and I could tell that in 14 years you have achieved a lot of results, and I'm really congratulating you for that. We don't really work so much with the public sector. In fact, we never, as we are responsible for the private sector. I am the man who defends the hospitality and the restaurant catering industry. But I do have to specify that with the OMT, the WTO, and the former chairmen which are here today on the sustainable development with the UN, in the UN, we define the criteria for the classification criteria in terms of sustainable development. And it's thanks to Mr. Hirari that we were the only hotel groups attending, along with 26 other organizations, to define those criteria over the whole year. I was on my own with 26 NGOs who had only in mind the idea to put obstacles in our ways. You guys have a lot of money, will do anything to know you. And when I asked to the UN, why did you choose me? They said, we know that you have a big mouth and you can calm them down. You can be shouty when it's needed. And this is exactly what they did. Today, the gap is huge between what our predecessors did in the hospitality and what it used to be. In the past, we would hire people because the father or the neighbor or a friend was working in the industry. They would join the industry. As a result of that, they would not get the training. They were asked to follow, and said the little new person had to follow somebody and would have to learn on the field. But little by little, with time and with his own personal intelligence, they were able to progress all the way to the top to become the general manager. So we had a group of general manager who trained on the field, following and working. This is no longer the case today. You do not hire somebody unless they have a qualification. This is what matters today, with a few exceptions. Of course, your work and experience does still matter. But there is a huge gap between what was done in the past and what is done today. This is quite outstanding. Napoleon Bonaparte did say once that the hardest art is not to choose the men, but to give the men all the value that they can have, the human relationships that we are talking about today. In principle, we are to define what we need in terms of human resources and assess what we have in order to develop the skills and the training. This is very important. And personally, I do appreciate the fact that there are loads of hospitality schools around the world. This is why I've encouraged and I've pushed in this direction for a service, for a department dedicated to universities and institutions. We have members who came from Nepal. We have some people from the University Church from Washington, and this is something quite outstanding what is done today in terms of training. It is truly outstanding, and I appreciate a lot their values. I'm familiar with a few hotel groups who went into countries where they found that the training wasn't quite as good as it wasn't excellent. So the chairman of these hotel groups would then decide to send some of their employees in various top schools in Europe or other places. They also pay for the expenses for them to go and live there. I have seen hotel schools who send people to train and pay for these people to train. And in my hotel group, I usually have 20 students which are dispatched in schools in France especially to go and do that training. So I do try to do my bit as well. Today we have a major concern in our industry is the concern of the century. How can you combine productivity with well-being at work? Because today it's important, the work-life balance. How can you have both productivity and the balance? The motivation is very important. It is really, truly very important. I attended a meeting for the World Organization. I had in front of me a huge queue of trade unions. So we have got left on the left. You have the unions on the left. You have the employers on the right, and I was elected to be to represent them. So I looked at the unions straight into the eyes and I said, today we do not need anything between us and the employees. This is no longer the case. Today we must speak directly to the employees. Several hotel chains, like in Marriott, for instance, an employee can go and speak to the director straight away. Today we have got chefs who have a salary which is higher than directors, and we have had enough of having people between us and the employees. One last thing, do you know that every year we have 10 hotels opening every day? So that's about 300 hotels who create new jobs. So we are the only obstacle, the only barrier, efficient barrier to unemployment, the only industry who keep on recruiting, hiring. In the automotive industry, they have robots. In our industry, we cannot have a machine, we cannot have a waiter, a robot to take the orders. The human factor is still very, very important, and I do insist on that. 3,000 hotels open in the world every year. So keep this number, this figure in mind. To create more schools, we do need more schools. We do need this. We need more institutions and schools. I believe I've said everything. Just one last thing. The politics also have a role to play in sustainable development. A major leader in European countries said one day that when peace is in Mediterranean, then we will have peace in the world. And I think it is an outstanding, remarkable quote. Thank you very much.